Welcome to this demonstration of BlueFusion for Analyst Notebook. BlueFusion for Analyst Notebook is a client-server plugin used as a workgroup shared repository as well as an extension to external data sources. With BlueFusion for Analyst Notebook, multiple analysts have access to the same information at the same time. To access the BlueFusion interface, you need to be able to connect to the BlueFusion server. In order to connect, you simply use the Analyst Notebook Data Source Connect button here at the top. Once you click on the Connect button, you then click on BlueFusion for A and B, and then Connect. The first logging attempt will prompt you for the server address. Once this has been entered, BlueFusion will save the setting and automatically remember it the next time you try to log in. In this case, we'll be logging in as the administrator of the BlueFusion server. Once the user has connected to the server, to the right of A and B under Data Sources, the user will notice that they have access to the BlueFusion Portal as well as a selection of other actions. Clicking on the BlueFusion Portal will bring up the BlueFusion Portal, or also known as the BlueFusion Dashboard. The analyst also has the ability to access the same dashboard by right-clicking on the chart, selecting BlueFusion for A and B, and then clicking BlueFusion Portal. The portal will bring access to a variety of functionality within BlueFusion. More importantly, you have quick access to Home, Browse, Search Queries, Importer, and Administrator tasks. We also have shortcuts for importing, Property Search, and Visual Query. Using Browse, BlueFusion gives you the ability to have a quick glimpse of the data that has either been imported into the BlueFusion repository or the information from recent external data source searches. In this case, the only information that is currently present in our data repository is an entity and a saved chart. Within this display, the user will notice that the results are broken down into entity type and the entity properties as defined in the Analyst Notebook BlueFusion schema. In order to access more properties for a certain result, the analyst can click on Column Visibility, which will then display all properties available for that entity. If the data is present, then the column is then populated. Within the same displayed result, users have the ability to delete items if they have the correct permissions. Deleting items will be deleting items from the BlueFusion repository, which can then no longer be retrieved. To examine the result more in depth, the user can click on Show Cards, and they will get a list of attributes for that item. They will also get any related images or documents that were either created during an import, a data source connection, or a manual entity creation. Once the analyst is satisfied with the search result, he or she may choose to send the results to a chart. He has a variety of selections here, which include sending items to a new chart. The next feature for BlueFusion are the search queries. There are two types of search queries: property searches and visual queries. We'll go through each one of them. For the first selection, the property search, it is an in-depth or more targeted type of search. The analyst has a wide selection of what entity to search for. These entities are created based on the Analyst Notebook BlueFusion schema created at the time of configuration. For this example, we'll select a person entity. We'll then choose to add more properties to this entity. Here, the analyst can assign whatever property they want to search for. In this case, we'll look for a last name, and then we'll choose the type of operation we want to search for on the property. We have a variety of search types, including smart match, exact match, and if they are a quantity, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. We'll search for an individual with the last name Allen. Next, we'll add another property. Similarly to before, we'll select the property name. This time we'll choose first name and then just do a smart match for James. Once we're satisfied with the search type, we'll click on Search. Now that we have our result, we can easily add it to the chart as well. What we'll do next is we'll be doing a more targeted search. This time, we'll include other entities in our search. In this example, we can select on Add Link, and then we'll get prompted to select which type of link we would like to search for. Next, we choose the type of entity we're interested in. In this case, we'll do a phone number. We'll click on Search, and this results in 0 returns. Now this is expected. Say for example that the data has been generated elsewhere and you've decided to map it manually. One way to add this data or this new entry point is by adding it via a chart. So, opening the BlueFusion Analyst Notebook Schema palette, we can select on the BlueFusion palette. Here, we can choose which type of entity we want to add to our chart. We can either add an entity, or in this case, a phone number which has been generated from a manual source. Next, we select the BlueFusion link type. In this case, we'll do an access to, and we draw it on the chart. After adding it on the chart, we can simply add the BlueFusion attribute of main number and then add its value as necessary. We'll click OK. Now we have a linked chart, which we may then choose to directly upload to BlueFusion or continue to grow from it. This time, we'll choose to add a new entity using a different method. We'll simply click on New Entity to the right, select a new entity in the new given form. In this case, we'll try to add a new person. Once the person has been selected, all of its property types will be populated. We can include a social security number, as well as a first name and a last name. Next, we select these as identifiers for our new entity, and we can choose to save the entity to the chart, as well as to BlueFusion. However, we'll add 2 images that we have gathered from this individual. Now that we have our images added, we can choose to save the entity and then chart. Click on yes, and we get a notification that the upload was successful. From here, now that we have a new entity created, we may choose to add a BlueFusion link between Jane Doe and a known connection to the same number we created previously. Next, we can choose to upload this new information to the BlueFusion repository by clicking on Upload Items to the right. Clicking on Upload Items to the right will bring up a BlueFusion Uploader window, which will guide you on how to map the data if it is not a BlueFusion item. In this case, because these are all BlueFusion items, the information will automatically map to itself. We'll then click Next, and then we'll validate each property for each entity being uploaded. Once that's been done, we click Next. The next window brings us to the item uniqueness. Similarly to Analyst Notebook importing, you have to identify each entity via its properties. Once the selection has been made for each entity and links, we can upload directly to BlueFusion. Clicking on Upload will then give you a notification that the BlueFusion items have been uploaded. Next, we'll click on BlueFusion Portal, but this time we'll run the exact same search we tried to run earlier. Now, we actually get real results. These results can then be sent to a new chart. And from here, we can use another BlueFusion functionality and choose to expand upon these entities. We simply select the entity we want and then head over to our right and click on Expand. From here, we may choose to right-click on Jane Doe and then select BlueFusion for A and B show additional cards. Like we previously mentioned, we can store multiple images for any entity we have uploaded. In order to run more complex searches, the analyst has the ability to run visual queries. To do that, you can click on Search Query and then New Visual Query. A visual query is appealing because it can consist of more than 2 entities. If we wanted to run a search for the data that we finished uploading, we could do it as follows. First, we'll look at the entity type of the person and then drag it over to the query canvas. We then do the same for the other entities in question. With the entities on the chart, we can then draw the links between them by simply clicking on the arrows and dragging to each entity. To edit the entities and add properties to each one of them, we can simply double-click on each entity and we'll get a prompt similar to the property search prompt that we got earlier. We define each one of the properties as needed, and then we click OK. With each entity already defined, we can then choose to move it around, add more properties, or add more entities. For now, we'll just click Search. As we can see, we get results as we previously did with our property search. In this case, we can now select the results that we want and send them to a new chart. Our next BlueFusion feature that we'll talk about is the BlueFusion importing. To access the BlueFusion importer, simply open the BlueFusion dashboard and select Import on the left. We'll then click on New Import. This will open a new window where you can browse to any file that has been stored on your local computer. For this example, we'll select a dataset based on insurance fraud which we have obtained from an agency. From here, the analyst has the ability to either create a new specification similarly to Analyst Notebook, or choose an existing specification which has data already mapped to a BlueFusion Analyst Notebook schema. If the user selects an existing schema, he may then choose to verify that the information has been mapped correctly. From here, he can examine all individual entities, their identities, as well as their attributes, and any of the columns that have been assigned. Once the analyst has verified that the information is correct, you can click Next. This last window will prompt you whether or not you want to save the specification. If it's a valid import, you will get a green display. Once a valid display has been shown, the user can then click on Import. Clicking on Import will prompt you with a new window which will tell you the import progress as well as when it's finished. Once the import has finished, you can simply close the window. In order to verify that our import was successful, we can choose to do a browse as previously mentioned. From here, we can examine the specific data source, or in this case, the file source, by clicking on Data Source within the Results panel. This will then filter out all of the results given the exact file source. We can quickly browse through it and see that all of the information was correctly mapped as we wanted it to be. The BlueFusion file importer serves as just another one of many tools that BlueFusion provides. Again, because the file is being imported directly to the repository, analysts have an easier time running queries than having to comb through a spider web on the chart. To verify this example, we'll run another visual query. This time, using another functionality of BlueFusion, the analyst can simply load a saved query. Saved queries have the ability to be ran on a scheduled system, meaning that the system can keep tracking for you whether or not the search has brought back any results or if it continues to grow as time progresses. In this case, we'll just simply load the query. Once we examine it, we'll just click on Search. Running a visual query as such will give you these results. We can then choose to send all the results to a new chart. Once we have the items on the chart, we'll simply rearrange them so that the links minimize the number of times they cross. Now that we have a better picture of our result, we can quickly analyze how this information is related to both of the individuals in our search. Using BlueFusion has many advantages. One of them is the ability to connect existing external data sources directly to it. In order to enable BlueFusion connected sources, we can simply open the Connected Sources button at the top, select Configure Connectors under BlueFusion for A and B, and then open up a window which will give you all of the active connectors. Enabling BlueFusion connectors will give you another functionality, which is the ability to expand upon those external data sources. More so, the analyst may choose to do filter expands, so that not all of the data is brought back, but only specific entities that he or she may be looking for. In this example, we can either select person or address and expand it, or we can simply choose to just expand. Clicking on expand brings back additional entities for this individual. We can see that additional entities have been mapped on the chart. We can choose to do the same thing for any of the entities mapped on the chart. In this case, this other entity can also be filter expanded or just simply expanded. Again, minimizing our crosslinks gives us a better picture of the current situation. This time, we have included our external data sources, which have brought back additional entities, which we can continue analyzing. Or we can choose to save our current progress and upload a chart directly into the BlueFusion repository. We simply give it a name to our chart, and then we click Upload. Our next feature is geared towards administrators who want to keep track of who has access to the system. In order to access the administrator section, you open up the BlueFusion Portal and click on the Administrator tab. If the user has administrator permissions, he or she will see it displayed. Clicking on the Administrator tab gives you a wide variety of access to administrator actions, including the ability to create accounts, create permission groups, set up alerts, establishing the timeout before the user has to log in again, as well as resetting passwords. Creating group permissions are pretty straightforward. The user simply clicks on Groups, and they will be prompted with a window that gives them each user currently created. These users can then be added to different groups depending on the level of accessibility that they can have. It also gives them the ability to be able to read certain things, as well as not being able to write back into BlueFusion. Lastly, once the user has conducted their analysis for the day and wants to wrap up, all they have to do is simply close out Analyst Notebook, or just go up to Connected Sources, BlueFusion for Analyst Notebook, and disconnect. Thank you for joining me in this demonstration of BlueFusion for Analyst Notebook.